thank you.
Do you guys know each other?
Yeah, she introduced me.
So good to see you. Hugs. All right, so we've got another couple of minutes while people are going to log on. And if you're able to access the worksheet already, you can download it from the Dropbox link in the comments section. But if you feel like just letting us know where you're from, telling us a little bit about you, that would be really nice. Mai, did you want to share where you're from?
I will type. I'm from Vietnam. Hello, everyone.
And she speaks very good English. She's being coy. Hey, Himalaya and Michi, nice to have you guys here. Renata, Hadi, Leslie.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you again. Nice to meet you, Chamai, from all of us. All right, so feel free to keep your videos on today. I love to see your faces. And just to give you a little background perspective on my situation, I am a stay-at-home mom. I homeschool my 4 kids, and our business is run virtually, fortunately, as well as virtually. Live to Serve Academy is a virtual school, so we run all of our trainings online. We do stuff in the community, but especially over the past couple of years with all of the big changes that have happened in the world, we really doubled down on going virtual. So I love to see people. I'm probably more excited than you guys. So if you want to keep your videos on so I can see faces and feel a little bit like human connection again, I would love that. So my background as a health professional is I have a background as a holistic yoga therapist. So my scope of practice isn't working with asana and the physical practice to cure or work with disease or injury management. It's more to do with the traditional yogic path with Ayurveda, health and well-being in accordance with helping people on their path of self-discovery, improving vitality, and elevating our mind and consciousness for the sake of living a more vital and fulfilling life. So that's kind of my scope of practice. And I have a background in Ayurvedic nutrition, personal training. I'm obsessed with routines and regulation and the wonders that it does for human physiology and the mind. And yeah, I'm really just excited to be able to connect with you guys tonight. So what we are going to be covering, all to do with Ayurvedic psychology, but very much just the tiny tip of the iceberg to hopefully intrigue you guys to dive further into it, because it's so simple and so safe and so accessible. Everybody needs to know about it. And I hope that this does intrigue you in some way and helps you to just start applying it to your life so that it can improve your quality of life. So this is the beginning. And also, you know, whenever we do sort of webinars or short educational pieces like we're doing tonight, I can only present what I can present in 1 hour. So in some respect, things will be taken out of context or modified. We'll go mute. Yes, just so we don't have any feedback. Thank you. So it will be slightly modified from the traditional sense, but that's not to take away from the validity of what the true traditional practice of Ayurvedic psychology, which shouldn't actually even be separated from the full picture of Ayurveda. So I'm being a little bit cheeky and lifting it and presenting it to you, but my introduction to health and well-being and the work that I do in the health realm, I came through eating disorders and mental health challenges, all kinds of crazy stuff. And it was some really basic things to do with lifestyle that helped me fill in the gaps to actually heal forwards, not just medicate and not just talk about the problems of my mind, but actually also implement a very holistic approach to healing forwards and being able to self-manage my mind and my mental health in my life's journey. So it is lifted out of what should be taught as a holistic Ayurveda in its truest sense, but it's also really relevant because a lot of the issues that we have today are actually mental health related, sense drive related, you know, not understanding like how this is operating, and therefore we can't really get a grip of it. And all of the sensory stimulation and the fast pacedness of life and the way that our minds are constantly engaged these days, we really need some simple techniques, some straight up dosage of like remedies for how we can actually self-manage our mental well-being, and not just think about mental health, but really try and create a pathway for ourselves that supports mental vitality. Does that sound cool? Okay, who's heard of Ayurveda before? Yes, awesome. Who's completely new to Ayurveda? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to screen share here now. And feel free to butt in anytime if you have any questions or if you want to share at any point throughout the webinar, and go ahead and use the chat box as well, because this is all about helping you. I don't just want to project information at you like, and you're like, oh my God. It'd be great if it could be an open discussion so that you're actually digesting what we're talking about and you're able to take it away and start working with it. Because a lot of what we're talking about is accessible right now. It's nothing fancy. It's all stuff that, you know, we have access to already. So why not, you know, get this webinar and start making those changes? Okay. And also just a reminder too that this is being recorded. So if you drop off, or if it's feeling like, oh, how am I going to retain all this? You're going to be given lifetime access to the recording plus a digital bundle of stuff as well. Okay, so what we'll be covering today is an introduction to Ayurvedic psychology, understanding the mind from a Vedic perspective, the mind-body connection, and then we'll be looking at the primary energies of the Maha Gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, which is where things get really like tangible and applicable. So, Ayurvedic psychology, what is it? As I mentioned, I lifted it out of the true full medicine of Ayurveda, and it is inextricably linked to Ayurvedic medicine, but in plain terms, from a Western perspective, Ayurvedic psychology really speaks to and understands that what we consume on every level and what we expose our senses and our mind to has an effect on our mental health. So the quality of the food that we eat will be reflected in our state of mind. The quality of content that we consume will also be reflected and stimulate, you know, a state of mind. And the relationships in the company we keep, the environment that we keep. So Ayurvedic psychology is rooted in Vedic knowledge, in Ayurveda, and it also stems across to yoga as well. So traditionally, when you read about the Maha Gunas in Ayurveda, they'll be referred to as the three guna, so three gunas, the three attributes. And then if you go over into yoga, in the Bhagavad Gita, they're referred to as the Maha Gunas, or great gunas. And so there is definitely an origin in Vedic knowledge. And like this understanding of Ayurvedic psychology and Ayurveda in general, as well as yoga, is that these are dharmic sciences. So they're not newly presented scientific theories. It's not based on hypotheses. It's the science of what is. So really just naming and articulating the workings of nature, the workings of the universe in a way that we can understand, so that we can work to harmonize with nature to achieve optimal well-being or whatever our health and life goals are. So with Ayurvedic psychology, there is a strong influence of Vedic knowledge. That's where it stems from. And you'll see slight differences if you go in and research it. There'll be slight differences as to how it's taught and what's emphasized. But the principal thing that is taught in Ayurvedic psychology are these three energies: Sattva, the mode of goodness; Rajas, the mode of passion; and Tamas, the mode of ignorance. So we're going to go over those three energies and profile them at the end of this talk. But they're the three energies that once we sort of get an understanding of how they're at play, it's almost like you can see the puppet strings in our lives of how we get pulled in different directions, or how we cultivate different desires or likings or dislikings for certain things in our life. So one thing that I personally really latched onto when I was struggling with my mental health issues when I was 18, 19, and I was looking for answers, like, why do I feel like I have a vision of what I'd like to do with my life? Back then it was like, I would love to go to university. I'd love to become a dietitian or a nutritionist. And I had this plan in place. And then it's like, why does my mind keep taking me to the nightclub? Why does my mind keep taking me to eat so much sugar? Why is my mind going off in all of these different directions? And I can't seem to control this internal logical desire into this path of like what seems intelligence versus my senses going, oh yeah, that sounds fun, let's go do that. Oh, this sounds great, let's go do that. Doesn't make any sense though. Yeah, but it sounds really good, let's go. Has anyone experienced that before, where you're just like, it doesn't make logical sense, but I'm going to do it anyway? I was the queen of that impulse, and following my desires, following my senses, to the point where it became so habitual, that became my conditioning, that my mind and my senses led my life. And what my recovery involved was this understanding through yoga and meditation, through Ayurveda, where they really clearly articulated your mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. Krishna even speaks directly on it in the Bhagavad Gita. So it really unlocked this idea of like, oh wait, my mind. Okay, so me personally, spirit, soul, Atma, I have a mind and I have a body and senses, and it's up to me to actually go through the hard work of disciplining my mind, of training my mind. Just like we condition our body to be fit and strong, we can also do that for our mind. And that's so completely empowering, because you know, sometimes we think we've got a dud mind and sometimes there are, you know, genetic predispositions, karmic predispositions to severe or chronic mental health issues that can't really be managed or improved with lifestyle, and just like, you know, physical things that we're born with or what have you. But for talking in a regular lifestyle, no other genetic impediments kind of a manner, there is this pathway where we can choose to make the mind our best friend or our worst enemy. So either using our senses and mind to degrade ourselves, or using our senses and mind to inquire spiritually, to live a fulfilling life, to help, to make an impact on other people's lives, to serve. So, and to choose healthy foods that make us feel good, you know, all that sort of stuff. So this is like a really big piece of the puzzle in understanding that there is a choice there, and what we do each day, how we engage our mind each day, does accrue and accumulate to our experience of our mind, which is our experience of life, really. Because when however you're perceiving through this film of the mind, or like, you know, it's an invisible force of the mind, that is what controls our perception of life. So if we're muddying it up with all kinds of unhealthy behaviors, toxic is the modern word, toxic kind of relationships and content and things like that, activities, it's going to create that warped perception in our mind, and we'll start believing that, oh, this is my life, this is who I am, this is what I'm supposed to, like, this is it. Whereas a healthy, balanced mind can take us in the direction of open-mindedness, of peacefulness, gratitude, being able to see beyond our own personal situation. So just to expand further on that, one of the differences between there's a lot of major differences between Western medicine and Eastern school of thought, but between Western psychology and Eastern psychology, or Ayurvedic psychology, Western psychology works more on the mind. And I believe in psychology. I believe in, and I'm an advocate for Western medicine. But if we can have a full vision of the body and what we're working with, that this vehicle that we're traveling around in is not just this gross flesh and bone, it's also these subtle layers. And also that we are spirit, soul, spiritual in essence, Atman. It gives us more to work with. And that's where Ayurvedic psychology can complement really well with Western medicine, because Western science is, I mean, miraculous, phenomenal. But if we can just bring in and complement with Ayurvedic psychology, it gives us the full picture of what we're working with so that we can target all areas of health and well-being, not just the gross physical aspect. So this little picture is a nice, funky, very simplified picture, just sort of elucidating that awareness that we're not just, you know, this body. And in yogic terms, there's a beautiful mantra, Aham Brahmasmi, which translates to, I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, I'm spirit, soul, an eternal spark of the Supreme. And that nugget of wisdom there is like something that if you contemplate it every day, you know, and really start acting on that, it can change the course of your life. It's so profound to open our mind to, or open up to the fact that our life is more than just this body. And, you know, and then if I'm not my mind, well, who am I, you know? And if I'm not my body, there's all these other dimensions of us, you know, that we need to take care of. It's not just the physical body. We also need to take care of our subtle bodies. We need to take care of ourselves spiritually as well. And what I've noticed too, not to speak lightly of Western medicine, this is something, you know, I not to be taken in lieu of Western medicine when you have mental health problems, but one thing to consider too that can elevate our experience of our mind and mental health is if we're starving spiritually, it can manifest as loneliness, depression, feeling like something's missing in our life. And if you're turning just to Western medicine, the doctor will say, oh, here's some medication for that, or here's something on a material plane to help you with that problem, but it's a matter of the heart. So this is where Ayurvedic psychology and yoga have that recognition that to feel mentally vibrant, to feel on purpose in our lives, we need to seek more than just the physical aspect of the body, and seeking to understand who we are on a spiritual level then leads us to next steps of, well, how do I nourish myself spiritually? What's my life purpose? And then leads us on that really exciting big journey. So from there, that's just touching on that. I've got a whole yoga teacher training that could, that's like a whole life. So, so that was just touching on that, I will say. So before we move into talking about the Maha Gunas, I am going to very quickly touch on the doshas, because they do have an influence on the way that our mind operates. And I've got other resources that I can send you guys that have a little bit more information on the doshas, because we don't have time to cover the doshas as well as the Maha Gunas today. But just to give you a short recap, we have these three energies that work on a more subtle level. That's the Maha Gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. On a physical level, for managing our health and for understanding nature and our environment, we have the doshas, which are three energies that are made up of the 5 material elements. So Vata is made up of air and ether, Pitta is made up of fire and water, and Kapha is made up of earth and water. And each of the doshas, we have all 3 in our mind-body makeup all the time. And they're able to fluctuate in their levels as well. Sometimes we have an obvious genetic predisposition for one particular dosha or 2 of the doshas. But in any case, the reason why I'm bringing them up here is because when we look at the Maha Gunas work in and tie in with the doshas and our physical and mental well-being. The doshas will help you to understand personality traits, physiological traits. The Maha Gunas can help if you're working with more of a mode of goodness lifestyle. The mode of goodness lifestyle will help to elevate the positive aspects of the doshas. So if anyone here is familiar with the doshas, you know that we can lean into the shadow side where things get a little bit problematic, pathological, and a bit, you know, uncomfortable mentally, not the pretty sides of personality traits. But if we're leaning into the more side of things and positive side of things, we will experience.
Underneath it.
Mute if you can. Ask to mute. Oop. All right, so if everyone can just make sure that they're muted, that would be amazing. So when we're living a more mode of goodness lifestyle, we're more likely to develop the positive aspects of the doshas. So if you have that fundamental or foundational understanding of the doshas, then you can elevate that experience with mode of goodness living. Leslie says, hello, may I ask if you provide a certificate after the webinar? I could definitely send you something of completion, a 1 hour of completion that can go towards yoga teacher training, learning, and CDP points for sure. Okay, so I'm so sorry that we're not going into the doshas because it is really fascinating to go into them, but not for this short 1 hour webinar. So leaning into the Maha Gunas now. We have 3 energies: Sattva, the mode of goodness. And I've got this cute little picture here, which is like a rainbow, happiness in the mind, Care Bears kind of a feeling. And then we have Rajas, which is more action taking, get to work, get stuff done. And then we have Tamas, which is a bit more distressed, confused, disillusioned. So in a nutshell, they're the 3 energetics at play. So even just contemplating these 3 already, you might be able to relate to times where you've experienced these. And it's good to also relate to these 3 energetics throughout your day as well, because learning about the energetics of things as they interrelate in nature, in our own mind and body, is a really important way to learn about things so that you know you can experience it in real time, because it's never a fixed state. It's never like, oh, I'm going to follow a mode of goodness diet and live a mode of goodness life, and therefore I will be mode of goodness. It doesn't work like that. There's the energetics at play throughout the day. There's the environments that we expose ourselves to that will, you know, start to shift the balance of these 3 energies. So you might have moments throughout the day where you have a little tamasic moment. They say that actually daydreaming, like when you go and space out, if say if you're in a uni lecture or something and you're like, oh, or a really boring board meeting and you start spacing out and someone goes, hello, are you there? And you're like, whoa, where was I for a moment? That would be considered a tamasic moment, but it doesn't mean that you've spiraled down into tamas and there you are stuck and you have to then go through a whole lifestyle you know, behavior change thing. And same with, like, you can go to go into a work environment where maybe you've had a completely mode of goodness morning where you've got up and you've had your morning practice and your morning routine and you've had your green smoothie, but then when you get to work, it's power suit on, it's creative work, it's get the projects done, it's go, it's meetings, communication, relating, pushing to get stuff done. And in that time, you will be in that more mode of passion, energetic. So they're not necessarily fixed state, and we can experience them in different lengths as well. So when I typically work like with wellness coaching, when I was working with people that were recovering from eating disorders, drug and alcohol addiction, addictions of other kinds, it would be more like, whoa, this fixed state that I've been living in, a tamasic state for years. How do I get myself out of this? And it could take 3 to 6 months to really, really unwind and mechanically shift out of that energetic to be in a stable mode of goodness, mode of passion, kind of a functional state. But if you're a healthy functioning person already and you're not struggling with behaviors or your mind, you will notice these little shifts and changes throughout the day. Like Tamas, when we go to bed at night, as soon as the sun goes down and it gets dark, it's like you can already feel that tamasic energy going, it's time to sleep, you know. so they have their purpose throughout the day, and sattvic energy at sunrise and sunset and a little bit leading into our day as well helps us get up and get going and be contemplative. Rajasic energy to get stuff done. And so they're not fixed states, and they can be differing in lengths in our experience of them throughout our lives. Okay, is this all making sense so far? How's it going? All good? Okay, let's go through a profile of each now. So the mode of goodness is sattva, and it generally tends to manifest in nature at sunrise and sunset. And you'll notice that when you go and visit a sunrise or a sunset, you naturally go into more of a peaceful condition. You naturally feel more contemplative. You feel like, you know, you start contemplating your life, and you might feel just that juicy kind of contentment and goodness. So some of the words or expressions of the mode of goodness are goodness, obviously, truth, harmony, purity, clarity, wisdom, balance, virtue, stability. So stability in our mind and in our life. Luminosity, that is, for me, that word is like luminosity. If that were a perfume, I would buy it. I want to be that. Give me all the sattva. Intelligence, wisdom, stability, less affected by the ups and downs of life. That is probably one of the most wonderful things about living a mode of goodness lifestyle, is that it does give us that resilience through various ways, which I'll get to in a moment. Happiness and tendency towards spiritual inquiry. So they're on a therapeutic level. When we're talking about mental health, mental well-being, one of the hardest things to do is manage life's hardships, right? And so without having an anchor of spiritual practice, mantra meditation, being anchored to an understanding of who we are in our life and our life's journey, and if we don't also have a lifestyle that supports this steadiness of mind, and a mind that is quick to inquire and seeks to understand, seeks to, look beyond the right here, right now, it becomes really hard to live in this world of chaos, especially we can see it now. It's completely highlighted over the past couple of years, just how chaotic life is and how confusing life can be. It's like everywhere, every corner we turn, there is some level of, oh my gosh, this happened, and then this happened, So if we were living a more, let's say for the extreme opposite example, if we were living in a more mode of ignorance state, where we're not looking after our health and well-being, we're living out of sync, like we're up all night playing computer games, we're not really taking responsibility for our health, eating junk food all the time, then when life's hardships come at us, it's, why does this always happen to me? And it's your fault, and I don't want to do the hard work to heal, and I'm so sick of this. And we get kind of stuck and bogged into this sort of depressive state where everything feels heavy and everything feels overwhelming all the time, and we don't see a way out. So that's a really obvious, overt, kind of exaggerated experience of it, but it can happen to us in slight ways as well. And I've experienced this myself. In 2020, I went through a bit of a dip. I think it was about 6 months into the pandemic, and being at home with 4 kids and in isolation, and just feeling like, and I think a few other hardships piled up. And I just stopped looking after myself. I was just getting stuff done. I was a bit on autopilot, and it was insidious. It wasn't a big, obvious downward spiral. It took my 2 closest friends, my husband and who were anyway, long distance, long story. We were separate at the time. My husband and my best friend, both within the same week, said, "Are you okay? The way you're talking about things in life, I'm a little bit worried about you." And when I heard them say that, I was like, "I'm fine." I reacted, and I kind of threw it back at them and projected my mindset onto them. And it took me a few days to go, hang on a minute. If I think about my lifestyle, I haven't been exercising. I've been basically just getting food on the table for the kids, like eating all the kids' food, heating up ready-made meals, ramen, 2-minute noodles, frozen pizzas, whatever I could do to just make it easy and get the day done, complemented with not exercising and being completely isolated and on technology more. I was operating and I was getting my life stuff taken care of, but I was doing it in a really tamasic way. So it can happen in this insidious way too. And it's really kind of, when you're living a more mode of goodness-ish lifestyle as your main template for life, your main sort of default setting, it does become apparent when you slip downwards a little bit into a more mode of ignorant state. And in that sense, it's these modes and understanding the way these energies work in that way give us a little opportunity for a self-temperature check. So it's not always just about our physical health. It's not always just about our gut, and it's not always just about the quality of, do I have pimples and am I gaining weight, and is my blood pressure okay? Because our mental health is so it flavors our quality of life, and it really guides our direction in life and our decision-making process, the quality of our relationships. So we need to pay really good attention and have awareness of our mental state of well-being as well. So this sattvic way of life does give us more resilience with the ups and downs of life. I will say, like, the mode of goodness isn't a spiritual plane in and of itself. It's still on the material plane. But what they do say throughout scripture is that it really sets you up for a springboard for going into spirituality or spiritual inquiry or taking up spiritual practice. It's the kind of material mode that we want our mind and conditioning to be under, so that it makes it easier for us to contemplate spiritual wisdom, to take up spiritual practice. And in that sense, then from there, it becomes, that pathway into spiritual living. So it does help us, it does bolster our mindset, it bolsters our physical health as well. It helps us to be a little bit more contemplative. So when heavy things happen to us, we question, how will I get through this? How can I grow through this? How can I, are other people going through this? What can I do to help them? It tends to have more of that kind of a reaction when we go through hard things. The funny thing too, though, is that it can have a shadow side because it's still on the material plane. And it's because we're still human and we have the capacity to be, be who we are. Sometimes what can happen is that we can kind of delve into the shadow side of the mode of goodness, where we're living so mode of goodness, and if only everybody could be as sattvic as us. Like, don't they know that they just have to eat healthy, and don't they know that, like, compassion is the way forward? And so that's a very real, and you might have friends who have enthusiastically gone in that direction, where they're so healthy, like outrageously healthy, but sometimes you think, was that a stab at me, or was that a backhanded compliment? Were they kind of insinuating something? So hands up if you've experienced that before. I've definitely been that person myself before. So beginner's enthusiasm, I think, when you first get into that kind of wellness path. So what causes the experience of the mode of goodness, or this influence of the mode of goodness, to really dominate in our mind and our life? Balanced living. So balanced living from an Ayurvedic perspective would be considered living in harmony with nature's rhythms. So following the circadian rhythm. In Ayurveda, it's referred to as dinacharya. So when you sleep at night and you wake through the day and work through the day, you exercise, you're eating at regular meal times, that lifestyle regulation is such a great foundation for not only our physical health, but our mental well-being as well. Choosing a diet of whole vegetarian foods, engaging in meditation on a daily or regular basis, engaging in contemplativeness. So you know, contemplating what is my life all about, being contemplative about the nature and workings of the universe and what may be beyond it, self-inquiry, living the yoga lifestyle, and spending time in nature. So some classic examples of mode of goodness type people would be, yes, your yoga teachers, your whole food alternative healthcare practitioners, but also like philosophers and scientists as well. Whether they actually live a really healthy lifestyle or not, but definitely that mindset of, you know, being really inquisitive and really curious, is more that philosopher kind of a personality. And we'll go through the different personality types. I'll give like a little avatar of each, of a made up version. But one of the indicators of how to know which energy you're under is you crave the qualities of that mode. So if you're living in a pretty mode of goodness place in your life, you'll be craving quiet, you know, you'll be craving and enjoying your meditation practice. You'll be like, what can I do on the weekend? Oh, I can't wait to go to kirtan. You know, what am I going to get when I go to the cafe? I'll get a green juice. Salivating, can't wait to have it, you know. And oh, I love to study. I love to, you know, what can I do for others? You'll be craving and thinking along those lines. And we'll go into more in-depth examples when we get to the mode of Tamas. But just to give you a contrasting example to get the concept across, somebody influenced by the mode of Tamas or ignorance, you give them a green smoothie, and because their cravings are in harmony with the mode of ignorance, which is all about, you know, processed foods and kind of toxic, you know, going off kind of foods, you give them a green smoothie and they're like, what is this sludge? Oh my goodness, you know. Even walking past a health food cafe, they'd be like, weirdos, oh my goodness, who would eat that stuff? So that's one of the other clear indicators for the temperature check of where we're at and how things are going for us is, what are we craving? What appeals to us? And then you look at the qualities of those things and it's reflecting back to you the quality that you're kind of cultivating. Okay, mode of goodness. Double thumbs up for the mode of goodness. We solve a lot of life problems, like individually, socially, if we were all living a bit more of mode of goodness life. Of course, that's a very utopian way of thinking. All right, let's talk about the mode of passion, another quality that I'm very familiar with, rajas. So rajas equates to the mode of passion. That word itself, passion, speaks volumes about this energy, about this material kind of influence. The qualities are to do with activation, agitation. That's a big one, agitation. We'll come back to that in a moment. Change, restlessness, energy, action and motion, creativity, and goal-oriented, but also a bit self-seeking as well. So when we look at mode of passion energy in this very generalized on paper way, it's like, okay, yeah, we can see that mode of passion energy is great for our movers and shakers, great if you're working in corporate or you're running a business, even if you're a busy parent or a friend and you're kind of like managing multiple things at once, mode of passion energy is excellent for helping you get stuff done. Where mode of passion energy has a bit of a shadow side is that if it's escalated to its kind of like extreme end, it tends to breed agitation in the mind. Nothing is ever enough. I set goals and everyone goes, wow, they're real goal-getters. I mean, that's the thing, real go-getters and goal-getters. They're always achieving and doing things. And on paper and on social media, it looks like, wow, you know, but you speak to that person or you get in therapy with that person and they're like, it's never enough. I have all the things. Why aren't I happy? I reach the goal and then I find myself setting another one and I'm never satisfied. So this agitation that coexists with that level of activation that comes with the mode of passion has a bit of a sticky side. So then the self-seeking side of things as well. I don't know if you guys have experienced any time where you've been caught up in yourself and you just feel like, you know, it gets to a point where it's kind of depressing. It's not when you're just serving yourself, it's the opposite of our true nature. As spirit souls, we serve God by nature. That's our truest essence, to be of service to our brothers and sisters, our spiritual brothers and sisters, to have that kinship. So if we're constantly self-seeking and goal chasing, not only is it agitating for the mind, but it kind of keeps leading to dead ends where we feel like, why does it feel like I'm banging my head against a wall? Why does it look like materially I have everything, but I feel like something's missing? So that can be the experience of the mode of passion. But again, let's talk about it on a more therapeutic lifestyle perspective. If somebody is really entrenched in the mode of ignorance and they've been living this kind of heavy, depressive sort of life or addicted life for quite some time, adding some mode of passion, injecting it into their life is a great next step for helping them razz up their mind and sort of get them self-seeking a little bit. Because sometimes when people are in that mode of ignorance state, it's like apathy and what's the point? And, I'm just eating to try and fill the void. And, then if you're adding a little bit of mode of passion there, therapeutically, it's actually a wonderful thing, because all of a sudden, hey, this person wants to set goals for themselves. They want to get fit. They want to look a certain way. They want to take pride in the way that they look. Maybe they chase a career all of a sudden. So it can be this wonderful activator to help us shift out of those times when things are feeling a little bit heavy and dark. The other thing to note is that time, place, and circumstances with all of the modes, with all of the energetics is, excuse me, sometimes we need a little mode of passion to get stuff done. Wet my whistle. Excuse me. So if you're a CEO or if you're a working parent, for example, or working and you're the one who is, I'm so sorry, I'm actually recovering from a cold. And talking is the very thing that always triggers the coughing. If you are supporting a family or a loved one and you need that oomph and that activation to be able to keep pushing forward so that you can bring in the bread, take care of your family, it is important to have a healthy amount of the mode of passion. What you can do to offset the mode of passion so that it doesn't cause imbalances to an extreme extent is actually, say you have a very mode of passion driven career that you're engaged in. What you can do outside of your working hours is be living mode of goodness lifestyle behaviors. Wake up in the morning, cleanse your body, meditate, get out in nature. Foods throughout the day would be mode of goodness, whole foods. When you finish work, going for a long walk outside in nature, getting your feet on the ground, getting grounded, practices like yoga and meditation, and then winding down, going to bed on time. Those sorts of things can help to offset the edge of the mode of passion, because you'd hate to be someone that's like, oh, okay, cool, mode of goodness is the ideal goal, okay. And then all of a sudden you start like you run off, basically, like figuratively speaking, run off to the Himalayas to live this perfectly perfect mode of goodness lifestyle, but at the same time negating responsibilities. So we have to not look at these energetics in an isolated way and not in a black or white thinking way. It's really good to get to know them and get to know the strengths of each one of them and where they're relevant in our lives, and also how to work with them to create balance. So what actually provokes rajas in us, in our mind, in our body, are stimulants such as coffee and black tea, cacao, also very spicy foods, salty food, extremely salty foods, and over striving to achieve, really like just letting our ambitions overwhelm us. All right, let's go on to Tamas, the mode of ignorance. So the mode of ignorance is, as it says, as it's described, ignorance. It's actually said to feel like, or is the experience of almost like a veil over us, where we experience dullness, delusion, heaviness, inertia as well, where we feel like we're stuck. Physically, it can be inertia, like don't really want to get off the couch, don't really want to go to the gym or exercise. That's completely unappealing to me. Can't see myself doing that anytime soon. No, thank you. But also in the mind, like inert in the mind, where you're not thinking or plotting goodness. You're not thinking of your life ahead. You're not thinking about how you can impact others. You're literally right here now, but veiled. So Netflix binging is a great example of going into like a mode of ignorance, kind of a space out, where it does feel like this heaviness comes over our mind, and this sort of stagnant energy tends to create limitations. So limiting beliefs, or this idea that I can't do that, or, you know, anxiety, depression, this feeling of chaos in our environment as well. Maybe it makes it difficult for us. We become disorderly in the way that we live. Lethargy, violence, viciousness, and ignorance. So even though sometimes when you see somebody angry, you can clearly see the experience of the mode of passion coming through that anger, but quite often it's coupled with the mode of ignorance, because people forget who they are, they forget their true nature, they're completely absorbed in this delusion that what I'm feeling right now, right here, right now, is real, and I need to project it at someone. So the experience of the mode of ignorance can be really overwhelming, and also a huge factor in physical disease. So the combination of rajas and the mode of ignorance, so rajas and tamas, is said from an Ayurvedic perspective to be the disruptors that cause ill health, because it's through those sort of muddied up influences that we crave the wrong foods, that we engage in behaviors that aren't conducive to health and vitality. They're the ones that kind of steer us off in different directions. So junk food, overly processed food, meat, toxins, excessive mental stimulation, like too much TV or computer games, substance abuse, etc. That's typically what will cause or induce the mode of ignorance. So examples of, I forgot to give a mode of passion example. An example of a mode of passion person would be, I get up, I get on the treadmill, I'm on the treadmill putting together my to-do list, I get off the treadmill, I get dressed, you know, really take overly pride, obsessive about the way that I look and the way that I'm put together. And then I go off to work, I get a coffee on the way, and I'm in work and I'm doing the things, you know, and you offer them the green smoothie and they're like, oh, not really appealing. Oh, but it's going to enhance my productivity. It's going to enhance my capacity to achieve my ambitions. Give me the green smoothie. You know, I'll do whatever it takes. Yes, so then a tamasic person, a classic tamasic person example would be your teenager who's out of school, still living at home, no responsibilities, doesn't look like they're going to be stepping up to a job to move out of home. Why would I? This is the sweet life, up playing video games all night, maybe smoking weed or something, ordering pizza at 3 a.m., wakes up at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m., stumbles out to the kitchen, asks them a question, hey, how are you? Don't talk to me. You know, and then they're looking for food, open the fridge, and then they see the cold pizza on the stovetop from the night before. Yes, perfect, delicious. You know, so mode of ignorance, living out of harmony with nature's cycles, craving processed foods, shunting responsibility, dullness of the mind. So that would be a classic example. So there are 3 typical modes. So just going over them, hands up if mode of goodness is sounding like, you know, a simple and good place to be. Yeah, right? Go Sattva. And it's so simple, really. It does come down to when you see what it takes to induce these three different energies in our life, it comes down to our lifestyle choices. And if you think about how our lifestyle choices, we know now, even with basic knowledge of health, we know that what we eat affects our health, you know, in relation to disease. We know that how we engage our mind affects our mental health. Also with our sleeping patterns, you know, if you've stayed up late till like 1 a.m. 3 nights in a row, who's experienced doing that, where you haven't had enough sleep a few nights in a row and then you kind of become basically a psycho or a nutcase, or you just like can't make decisions, or you're crying about everything, or angry and irritable about everything. So we know that lifestyle has a huge impact on our health and well-being. But this understanding of these three energetics and Ayurvedic psychology gives us even more scope and understanding of how the puppet strings of material nature really do influence the way that we operate in the world and our experience of life. So once we know about these, and this is where I've got you good now, you can't not know this. You have to take responsibility now, no excuses. Once you know it, you can't unknow it. That these three modes are at play, and it's up to us, our behavior, our decisions in our life. We've got to take responsibility for our life experience through what we choose. What I love about this so much, because I am such a huge fan for things being actually accessible. When I came out of rehab, I was in hospital for 30 days when I began my recovery journey, I had to start all over again. I had no social network because they were part of my tricky situation. So I had no social network. I had no job. I had to start just finding a way forwards. I couldn't afford, you know, anything crazy. Like I couldn't afford to do a health retreat. I couldn't afford to go to do fancy detoxes or anything like that, or herbs or medicine. So through my own curiosity through yoga and Ayurveda, I was like, okay, what can I do? And that's where I really doubled down on lifestyle. I can meditate. That doesn't cost anything. That's free and accessible to everyone. I can sleep on time. That was something that I had really back to front. I used to work in nightclubs. So it was like, that was a whole thing I had to retrain. I can choose what I put in my mouth. Simple, basic vegetarian whole foods are some of the cheapest on the market. Doesn't have to be organic. Organic would be ideal, but even just the energetics of good quality, wholesome food, exercising, it doesn't cost anything to move your body. So all of these key things that make up a Sattvic lifestyle, completely free and accessible to everyone, no matter what your socioeconomic status is. So no excuses, guys. So once you know, and you kind of have this decision where it's like, well, yeah, what am I going to do with this information now? You do want to be able to live your best life, like, and the mode of goodness can open us up to further ways of thinking, as I mentioned earlier, that springboard into spirituality as well. So in summary, things that we need to look out for, things that tend to cause rajas and tamas are incorrect use of the senses, lack of control over the senses. So I mentioned earlier how I was experiencing, like, why do I think I want to do this, but I end up going and doing that? You know, it's really about being disciplined, that just because I crave something, just because I feel or desire something all of a sudden doesn't mean that that's what I need to do and that's what I should do. So having some control over your senses, using this base guidelines of the mode of goodness as a way to live, and trying to steer our senses, which can take time. Behavior change takes time. Habit forming takes time, but we can steer ourselves in a more mode of goodness lifestyle, which supports correct use of the senses. Then from there, engaging in behaviors that are not beneficial to health and healing. Excuse me. So really just not being whimsical about how we behave, having just a basic understanding of health and well-being, and consciously choosing to fill our lives with behaviors that are conducive to health and well-being, as opposed to behaviors that sort of take down our health and well-being. Living under the influence of tamas and rajas, lack of awareness of habitual behaviors, unconsciously going through the motions, one of the first things that I get my clients to do is tracking your behaviors, tracking what you eat, making that connection. Our first step in our 5-step transformation model is connection. Before you proclaim that you're going to make big changes, that you're going to get all these new habits down, the first step is to actually be aware of what you're doing, be aware of how you're living, connect with what you're doing, because that awareness of this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm at, then allows us to consciously choose to make some changes from there. Disrupted or irregular daily routines, regulation. It's so simple and it will change everything. It's really so important for health and well-being to live a regulated lifestyle in harmony with the circadian rhythm. Consumption of unnatural processed foods is another big one that can affect our state of mental well-being, and lack of nourishing spiritual practice. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're feeling spiritually disconnected, spiritually unfulfilled, you don't have a source of nourishment for you directly on a spiritual level, it really can manifest as feeling like an empty heart. Something's missing in our life. We have no meaning and purpose. We have no connection to something that is allowing us to feel safe and spiritually nourished. So mantra meditation, spiritual practice, prayer, kirtan, those sorts of practices are really, really wonderful for making sure that we're feeling nourished here, and it will help us to feel more content on a mental plane as well. This is just a really quick guide that I use inside my training programs to offer to my students for when they're working with people as well. But when we think about, well, how do I set up my diet? Is it all pure? Is it all mode of goodness 100% of the time? Yes, if you can manage that. But if you are human and you do have a little desire here and there, it's completely okay to venture out into Rajas and Tamas within reason. And sometimes it can actually improve your quality of life to have a little piece of chocolate, to go out and have pizza with friends. But I think it's about understanding the dosage of things. So if, like when we look at this pyramid, if 80% plus of our diet is made up of this foundation of the mode of goodness foods, it gives us this really good, strong buffer that if we occasionally, once or twice a week, have something that's a bit more rajasic or tamasic, we're not really going to undo that mode of goodness state. It's just we have that foundation in place. But yeah, just being mindful that 1 or 2 portions doesn't turn into a daily thing and then snowball into becoming a daily snack, or, which can happen insidiously. Okay, and finally, so inside your workbook, which I'll be sending out to you guys with the recording as well, you'll see in there is a life audit quiz, which is not a clinical quiz. It's more of a self-assessment quiz where you can actually give yourself a little bit of a reflection or insight into how you're living and what are some of the behaviors that you can work on to help you start taking steps towards living a more mode of goodness lifestyle. So this little quiz, life audit quiz, is designed to give you a more holistic framework to not just test for your physical health, but to actually look at, well, what are the behaviors that make up a healthy, wholesome mode of goodness lifestyle? And you might score a little bit lower in some of those behaviors, and then it gives you an indicator. Cool, I'll take that one behavior and I'm going to work on implementing that over the next few weeks, remembering that it typically takes 21 days to implement a new behavior. So if you have 3 or 4 there, don't try and do it all at once. Try and do maybe one at a time and let it be an ongoing journey of transformation, not a frustrating, why can't I, mode fashion style. How to balance the Maha Gunas? Well, I mean, everything that we just talked about, it really depends on, so Himalayas asked how to balance the Maha Gunas. To summarize everything, it depends on your time, place, and circumstances. What are you experiencing and what do you want to be experiencing right now? If you're feeling like you're in a bit of a tamasic state, know that the Maha Gunas generally operate up and down. So if you're in this sort of tamasic state, it's about trying to provoke this mechanical uprising of these energies by adding a bit of mode of passion and then slowly going upwards towards the mode of goodness. And similarly, we can also spiral downwards as well through the mode of passion into the mode of ignorance. So my favorite way to sort of just explain it in a very generalized, loose way is to go, okay, you've got some guidelines. You'll see it more in the handout that comes with the recording as well, that do a self-assessment of your diet, of your lifestyle. If you're living predominantly in the mode of ignorance, adding a bit of mode of passion foods, maybe one meal, shift out one meal, changing that one meal to a bit more mode of passion. And then when you're feeling a little bit more up and going, then starting to slowly shift that out to a more mode of goodness meal. And then maybe 2 mode of goodness meals a couple of weeks later, till eventually your lifestyle has gradually built into predominantly the mode of goodness. Yes, I will. So lots of questions about, do I provide a certificate of completion? I will, in the bundle, digital bundle that I send out to everyone, I will pop in there a certificate of completion. So finally, if this is something that interests you, I do have a short certification, Ayurvedic psychology, which gives you a much more in-depth, going into the mind, intelligence, Atman, all the chakras, the sheaths, all these different elements of the subtle bodies and physical health, dosha downloads, Maha Guna cheat sheets, all the fun stuff, dosha tests that you can use with loved ones. If you're already a practicing health practitioner, it complements really well with modalities that already exist. And that 20% off of that, or if you're ready to go all in, the Ayurvedic Wellness Coaching Certification is very much modeled around this, as well as using coaching techniques for behavior change, deep dive into the doshas. We cover integration, how to work with allied health practitioners, Western medicine as well, to give people a complete and guided experience of health and healing. So if that's something that you're interested in, up until the end of March, we have 20% off, and then we'll be closing the Ayurvedic Wellness Coaching Certification for the year. We've just started, we're through module 1, and our live calls are running at the moment, and it won't be launching again until 2023. So I think you end up saving about $600 off the Ayurvedic Wellness Coaching Certification, and they all come value stacked with access to the Dinacharya Clinic, which is my way of supporting all of our students, all of our aspiring health and wellness professionals. So you're not just coming and studying theoretically, you're also getting taken care of your own wellness. You're living all the practical aspects of what you're teaching to others. So you get to go through your own personal health transformation as well. Practical learning of what you're learning theoretically, so that when you do go out and serve the world with Ayurveda, you're coming from a place of insight, of direct experience. It's not just learning on a theoretical level, because practicing is such a different experience. But I very much love our community. They're such a wonderful, warm, friendly, easygoing community as well. So I'd be so keen to welcome you into it. And all of our courses are certified with IICT and Yoga Australia, so they can count towards continuing education hours and points as well. So if you're interested in that, definitely get in touch. We can even just chat over the phone to see if this course is right for you. It doesn't need to be like, okay, you must buy. I love chatting to people, as I mentioned earlier in the call. So feel free to just get in touch, and we can, just sort of see if this might be right for you. All right, guys, that is it for tonight. Any questions before we sign off? Let's go back to the beginning. What was your number one takeaway? Maybe type in the chat box. Go back to stop screen share. There we go. Now I can see everyone. All right. Lively bunch. All right. Thank you so much for coming. And as I said, any questions, you can hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, reply to my email when I send it out. But it was so nice to spend this hour with you, and I hope that it's given you something to work with It's so simple. Don't overthink it. It's really, really simple. It's as simple as it sounds. It's really accessible, and it's a really clear, easy way to start improving your quality of life and also your mental health as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice rest of your day or evening.
Can we take pictures?
Yes, go ahead, take a picture. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.